So, on today's episode of Recruiting Roundtable, we are discussing engineering hiring. And hiring software engineers is a top priority for basically every tech company in the world. And we have an amazing panel here to discuss this topic in more detail. Here today to talk with us, we have Pavan, who is Director of Engineering at Amplitude, and Karim, Senior SVP Engineering at StrongDM. Pavan, Karim, how are you guys doing?
Good.
Doing
Thanks for having
good.
me.
Thanks for
Happy
having
to be here.
Of course, of course. Thanks so much for joining. So let's start with some short intros. Please just give a little background of yourself, introduce yourself and your company. I'll start with Pavan.
Yes, I'm currently Director of Engineering at Amplitude. I lead the CDP engineering group. I joined Amplitude around 8 years ago as a staff engineer when we were a pretty small startup. Amplitude is the digital analytics platform which supports businesses to grow their digital product through data-driven insights and actions. Prior to Amplitude, I worked at various companies. I worked at Robert, Quantum, Semantic. I started my career as a kernel file systems engineer.
Okay, great. Thank you, Pavan. And Karim?
Yeah, sure. I'm head of engineering at StrongDM. StrongDM is a cybersecurity startup. We are in the authentication and authorization space, so access to critical infrastructure and authorization policies for that infrastructure. I've been with the company for just over 3 years now and have been in similar roles at different startups for about a decade now. I started my career in engineering at Microsoft in 20 plus years ago.
And you went to product, if I'm not mistaken, right? You were in
I did, I did a couple of years in product management as well while I was at Microsoft. So I've done engineering for a good chunk of my career, but I had 2 years while I was in product roles as well.
We see that a lot. I see people going from product engineering to product, and I think it's good to get a couple of years of experience in product. Probably helped you as you continued into leadership.
I think nowadays the lines are a little bit blurring because the role of engineering manager is shifting from like a pure scrum management and task management to even owning the outcomes along with the product managers and being able to work effectively with the counterpart to own the outcome of the product together. Yeah. So I think the lines are definitely blurring a little bit.
Oh, for sure. I definitely in our business, or we're in the recruiting business, right? So I see a lot of engineers turn PMs, turn engineering leaders. It's fairly common career path. So maybe we'll talk a little bit more about that because Karim, you have firsthand experience. And then lastly, my name is Sean Huynh. I'm the host of this podcast, also managing director of Rocket. We take a scientific approach to recruiting. We combine our talented recruiters with our AI model, which we've trained over 7 years, and our programmatic sourcing techniques to help find and engage candidates that are just really impossible to do with other platforms like LinkedIn. Okay, so we've talked a little bit. You did a little bit of intro. Can you share a little bit about the size of your engineering org, how big it is, et cetera? I'll be curious to learn a little bit more about that. Maybe we'll start with Karim.
Sure. So my team's around 30 engineers, mostly backend software developers. My team is comprised of, like I said, backend software developers, front-end DevOps, and a couple of folks in AI and data engineering as well.
And I know when we talked in the pre-show, you mentioned you have some folks that are like in Poland, I think it was. So can you share a little bit about the distribution of where those 30 people sit?
Yeah, so those 30 people we're 100% remote. The company's been around for a while pre-COVID and was started from day one as a remote first company. So my team is 100% remote, mostly in North America. More recently, we expanded into Eastern Europe. So you're absolutely right. I have a team of 4 who are also remote in various Polish cities. And that team has been with us for about 3 months now.
We'll definitely dig more into that. It's interesting. We're seeing a lot of trends with our clients. Some are kind of moving away from remote and going back to like office and kind of creating like their hubs in certain cities, and they want to be potentially all on site. Like some are 5 days on site or some are hybrid. And then we have other clients who have great success with being remote and are like doubling down on that and are going into other markets remotely. And it sounds like that's what you're doing. So interested to learn more about that. What about yourself, Pavan? Tell us a little bit about the size of your team and where they're located.
Yeah, I think at Amplitude we have around 130 engineers. I had the privilege of growing the team from like 2 to 25 engineers. In this process, I actually also started engineering team and site in Vancouver, and was able to grow it to 12 engineers in Vancouver, Canada.
And why Vancouver? Vancouver, you're getting battle with like Amazon, Microsoft out there. Why? Is that why?
Oh
Because of
yeah,
Amazon,
actually,
Microsoft?
I would love to hear from Karim like how the Poland is working for him. But we actually felt like remote is fine, but at least the time zone overlap is very very important to have that time where they can jump on the Zoom or like have conversations together. I didn't try personally, but I think we had another team which tried engineering office in London and shut down later because they felt like the time zone and the difference in the working hours is too hard to bridge.
Yeah. I did have teams. Actually, one of my key engineers is based out of Vancouver, and I did have a team in Vancouver a couple of startups ago. In terms of that time zone, it's a really good question. When we look at hiring overseas, I look at that team as an independent unit, meaning they're going to work together as a team with very little cross time zone collaboration. Now, there is an element of collaboration for sure, but what we don't want to do is I or they dependent on us working together continuously. If there's a bit of handoff, like an hour or two every now and then, that's fine. But if you look at the work and every day you need that 3 or 4 or half a dozen hours together, it's not going to work because to your point, the time zone is so dramatic that you end up burning people out.
Yeah, I agree. I think when I did the Vancouver, I had to kind of go with a similar mindset as well. Like first align on what this site would own, if you actually are successful in establishing it, and like kind of getting an alignment on it before even going and starting hiring an engineer. Even with that though, I would in Amplitude what we found, maybe it could be very specific to Amplitude because we have a shared repos and like build systems and all that. Like the teams usually get blocked by each other. Like some engineer at the end of the day does something which basically blocks stuff, or like then they would basically be trying to chase down that engineer the rest of the day, and which ended up creating a lot of inefficiencies. But I think, yeah, I agree with you. I think the decoupling and making sure that they don't need to look for each other every day is very, very important, especially if they're not in the same time.
So I have a question for both of you because it seems like both companies took a very what's the right word? You took a very deliberate approach in going to certain markets, right? And Karim, maybe I'll start with you because you're an entire remote company, but you specifically said, okay, we're going to hire people in Poland, and you went and you did that. What's the thinking? Like, instead of just saying, we'll just go remote anywhere, what's the thinking of saying, hey, we want to focus on a particular market? Is it a recruiting thing? Is it because at some point in the future you want to have an office? Is it because you just want people in the same time zone? What was some of the thinking behind that?
Pretty much all of what you mentioned. So because of the challenges that Pavan mentioned, like you don't want to start by expanding geographically and saying, I'm just going to hire them wherever, and end up having, 5, 6, or a dozen people scattered all over Europe. So we wanted to find a critical mass within reasonable proximity to each other. Remember that we still have to onboard those individuals, okay? And you can't really onboard them on Zoom. We have to get together, which we have multiple times, meaning we have to physically meet, spend time working together so that they can get up to speed. So it makes it easier if that team is co-located within a same region. And as it happens, they're all within 2 hours away from each other. The other motivation reason was, can we grow? Like if we start by say we just want one team, 4 to 6 engineers, can we grow within that region to 10x that? Is that region large enough to sustain that level of engineering talent? We also look at other factors like compensation, labor laws, and you fill in for all that mosaic, and you end up finding that there's a few spots in Europe that are very, very, very favorable, and Poland was just one of them.
Interesting. And Pavan, in terms of the Vancouver versus London decisions, where if you're a part of those, I'd be curious as to what drove you to those two markets in particular.
Yeah, I think one thing is we are not fully remote. We are hybrid. So we started an office in location. It was important to kind of say like, okay, they could have a office and that where they could come together a couple of times a week and work together. So it's not fully remote hiring from anywhere situation. And we basically prefer Vancouver mainly because of the time zone. They're exactly same time zone as us, so it's kind of makes it convenient. And the cost of salaries and was actually less of a factor. We were more looking to expand because Bay Area is super competitive and it's kind of hard to find good engineers. And we found like, okay, Vancouver has good engineers, especially because of that Amazon and other big companies that are already being there. So it felt like, okay, expanding there, we could have a good talent. So that's been motivation. London was actually more like a organic one because an engineer who we hired here wanted to relocate to London. So we were like, okay, fine, maybe you could go try to start an office there, but it didn't. As I mentioned, the time zone kind of made it really hard to work it out.
So let's pivot a little bit. Thanks guys for that context. So when you're building like high performing engineering teams in, let's say, a startup environment, like Pavan, I know like Amplitude's a little bit bigger now. I think you said you have about 130 engineers right now, right?
Yes.
Karim, you have about 30. What are some of the things you're looking for? Like, and maybe I can like be more narrow in terms of the focus, where it's like some clients say like, hey, we want generalists, right? We need people that have a breadth of experience in these different things because, we don't really know what we need yet. Whereas in other companies, they seem to know what they want early and they're like, hey, I want specialists. I want someone who's really strong backend or really strong on DevOps or whatever the case may be. What has been your typical philosophy when you're starting, let's say, a smaller engineering team, let's say less than 50 people, and as it scales, like, well, how does that, does that philosophy change? Maybe we'll start with Pavan on that because I know you've probably been through some of that growth already. Amplitude.
Yes. I'll first start with the team and then maybe we'll go into the individuals that I would hire. So my first focus when I'm creating a team is I would like to create an autonomous, self-sufficient team that could own the metric, not just some particular thing in the output, but actually the whole metric. So they could actually do whatever necessary to drive that metric. So that the metric that they are going to own actually pretty much defines what kind of team I'm looking at. I have, like, for example, when I was leading data pipeline team, which was pretty core real-time data processing, where we had to process like millions of data points per second. It requires a strong distributed skill set and distributed system skill set and real-time processing experience. And that we know that the team's goal metrics is all around uptime and scalability of that infrastructure. So there was like a strong emphasis on the distributed system skill set and having some kind of prior experience building certain distributed systems and being able to think from first principles to design any distributed system needed. Whereas when for example, when I went on to build the CDP team from 2 to 25 engineers, the metric is different. The metric is like, can Amplitude create a CDP that can go and survive in the market and prove a product market fit and can get adoption within the Amplitude customers. So then I try to build a more diverse team, team not only on the diversity of life experiences, but diversity in the skill sets, diversity in the kind of engineer, whether product focused versus technology focused, diversity in all respects, right? So I think if I'm looking for a product focused engineer, then the emphasis is less on technology and more on like how good they are with MVPs and like whether they are customer focused and customer obsessed or not, and could they iterate quickly along with having a good, strong general technical background. It doesn't need to be super deep on one particular thing. So it kind of depends on the kind of team you're building. And I think you are correct in the sense like as the company evolves, like when you have fewer engineers in the beginning, you probably require more generalists because each engineer probably needs to deal with a lot more stuff. But as you grow your team, you can have more specialists dealing with one particular thing Like when I started in Amplitude, for example, we didn't have a DevOps engineer, so everybody has to know how to build, how to do all the stuff. Now we have a DevOps team, or we have some engineer who is actually very specialized in Kubernetes, right? So it's kind of depends on the needs and then what you're trying to build as a team.
That makes sense. Karim, do you follow the same philosophy, or do you?
Yeah, pretty much. No, very much aligned. I think if you look at the profile of, I'd say 80% of the engineers we hire are going to be strong generalists, but they probably have depth in building distributed systems. And when I say distributed systems, if you look at the profile of a lot of the people on my team, they've worked on building large enterprise storage systems or databases. So things of that nature where they understand the complexities of building these scalable, highly performant enterprise systems. And that skill is highly applicable to what we do. It might not be a one-to-one mapping in terms of like you're going to build a database here, but the concepts and the problems that you dealt with in solving that particular problem apply very well here. As we grow and evolve, you end up finding that you are going to have to complement that with specific skills. So maybe you want to round the team and say, hey, we need someone with deep Kubernetes experience. Not just at the operator level, but someone who's able to, work in the Kubernetes code base. Okay, so they've got in-depth experience with Kubernetes as a software developer, and you obviously have to complement it with new roles that you might not have at the beginning, like DevOps roles, or if you're moving into AI, you might need to get someone who has experience building and training AI models. Those happen as the company evolves.
And let's kind of talk a little bit about some of the challenges that you may be having in terms of finding the right candidates. I think distributed systems in particular is one of the most highly sought after kind of skill sets, but I think it's one of the hardest to recruit for. I don't know if you guys feel the same way, but that's some of the challenges that kind of we've had. Curious if you echo those same challenges, or there's a different set of challenges when it's hiring engineers that you've encountered over the last, call it six months. Let's start with Karim.
It is most definitely one of the hardest roles to fill, because it is a role that is in demand, especially from large and small companies. Anything that you're going to be doing on the enterprise side, software-wise, you're going to need people with that skills for sure. If you're working or building things in AWS, Azure, GCP, or some of the big tech companies, you're going to need people with those skills. As it so happens, the market is very favorable now for employers. So it is relatively easier compared to the past to find that talent, but it is still very hard, no doubt. It's the easiest I found it in at least the 10 years that I've been doing this now, but it is still absolutely a challenge to find the right person. You want to find the right person that's also able to and wants to work at a small company, because you need to find that mindset as well. So finding the right talent that is able to solve the problems that we have and also want to work for a small company is not easy. Absolutely not.
I think that's probably why we're still in business. But I know and I'm going to get your feedback on this, Pavan. I'm not going to forget about you. But Karim, you did mention this, and I want to touch on this being kind of an easier market to recruit in. It's an employer's market. Do you think that's a function of just, all the layoffs and kind of sort of the tech landscape of the last kind of 2 years, or also because you've opened this up in a new like market and it's given you more opportunities?
Both, I would say. Obviously, the layoffs and the downturn that has happened over the past 18 months is a big factor. I would also say, to your earlier point, because we're remote, there is a class of engineers that want to maintain that remote life. Okay, whether because they started it in COVID and they enjoy it, and their employers are now moving them to a hybrid mode or full on back into the office. So we get quite a bit of inbound profiles from people who want to continue having that remote experience. Obviously, opening it up into new markets just expands the talent pool that you have. So we're trying to, because we're in that growth mode, we're trying to get the talent whatever we can find. Obviously, the bulk of our team is and will remain within North America, but we're also trying to complement that with a different talent pool completely outside of North America as well.
Mm-hmm. So Pavan, let's go back. I want to circle back to the question of some of the challenges you're having. And then also, while you're answering that question, are you experiencing the same thing? Has it been easier to hire recently this year, or has it been harder? Has it been the same? So challenges, and then how easy or hard has it been to hire in the last 6 months?
Yeah, I agree with the challenges, like hiring the distributed systems engineer with that skill set is kind of a little bit hard. I also found it like it's along with everything that Karim mentioned. The other thing I found that kind of contributes to it is, unlike other skill sets like React or others, you kind of need some practical experience dealing and building systems to be good at it. So then the practical experience is basically what kind of limits the talent pool that you have, because it's kind of hard to just grow on it unless you're basically starting as a fresher. So it's especially if you're trying to hire a senior or staff level distributed systems engineer, that kind of becomes a little bit hard. I think recently it has been definitely a little bit easier to hire because the openings are also less. So then if someone is not happy with their current position or current company, then like you actually definitely have more opportunities. And I definitely try to take it as an opportunity to hire for more stronger engineers. I think in a market which is actually really good, and every engineer comes with like 5 or 6 engineers, 5 or 6 offers, then it's kind of hard to hold that bar. At some point, like you lose 2 or 3 engineers and you feel like, okay, let's try to get someone who at least meets the bar. But now is the time to kind of raise the bar and try to hire a very, very good engineer. So I kind of see it as an opportunity in that sense.
As much as I'm happy for you guys, what I would give to go back to 2021 when all my candidates were getting 3 offers. I miss those days, to be honest. I do, but hey, I'm happy for you guys. Okay, let's pivot to interviewing. So when you're interviewing engineers, obviously everyone wants to know you can code. I think that's like table stakes. But what are some of the qualities you're really looking for that sets kind of like the top tier engineers, aside from kind of just, the kind of middle, regular solid engineers, but nothing special? What are some of those things you're looking for? Let's start with Pavan.
Yes, I think along with the technical skills, I think what differentiates the solid engineers is also that they take initiatives. So I usually look for few cultural aspects as well. Like I look for they're very high on ownership. They're very good on growth mindset, where they're continuously seeking out new challenges and continuously learning new skills, because the landscape is continuously evolving. You can't just be learning one thing and just be you need to be continuously learning new things and updating yourself. So that's the other thing I look at. And I also look at humility. They could be really good themselves, but then I kind of see it as a team sport. So one individual being really good, I don't really care as much, but I actually like to see that as a team they are 10x better than any one person, and as a team collectively they can come up with good technology and good solutions, even if it's not coming from one individual. So in that sense, it's very, very important that they have an open mindset and they are open to feedback. They don't just have like a one solution in their mind and just try to reapply it everywhere. They see that they're actually trying to take the trade-off, looking to see like, hey, what are the requirements? Every situation is different. I'm not just whatever I did in my previous role, I'm not just trying to come and stamp it, but actually looking at what are the new circumstances, what kind of trade-offs are good, and approaching it from the first principles and being open to critique and feedback to come up with a better solution. I think those things are the cultural side of it that I'm very, very keen on, that I try to see from their past experience and examples in their past roles, if they actually really exhibit those behaviors. I have had situations where I rejected few engineers, even though they kind of aced the technical side of it, because I kind of felt like they're not open to the feedback. They kind of felt like, oh, others didn't know good enough. If at all they followed my advice, we would have been in a better place, which kind of, it doesn't encourage that culture of openness and feedback. Right? That's very, very essential to have a good team.
Yeah, I think that's so I love what you said there, because like there's a couple things I took away. There's like humility, there's that coachability part, and I was also thinking about this today earlier before the show. It's like likability, I think, is underrated, right? Like
Yep.
being likable is kind of important. People want to work with you, and I used to work for an app development company, and I remember I would be in some very passionate, heated discussions around how to solve a problem. And I'm not super technical, but I learned firsthand that there isn't one way to solve any problem. There's often multiple paths to solve a problem, and sometimes ego can get in the way of solving that problem with the best solution, right? So I think being humble and being coachable and being a good teammate and being likable are all important things to a cohesive unit. So thank you for sharing that. Kareem, what about yourself?
Especially,
Go ahead, Pravan. Finish your
Go ahead.
thought.
Yeah.
I was going to say, like, especially as you go into the senior and staff kind of roles, it's very, very important that the rest of the team likes and always looking forward to working with you.
Mm-hmm.
Right? If a senior or staff doesn't meet that criteria, then it's kind of a huge red flag. It's basically their one of their responsibility is to up level the team and grow others and all, like in that aspect, that likability, that others look forward to working with them, look forward to their feedback to improve themselves, is very, very important.
Mm-hmm. It's like when we get rejections from clients, sometimes they say, "Oh, this person's not a culture fit," but they should just say, "I don't like the guy." Like, that's what they're basically saying. I don't like the guy, or I don't like the gal. Kareem, what about yourself? What are you looking for in an interview?
It's very similar to Pavan. I think we're aligned in pretty much many aspects. Obviously, there's the technical side. There's also the non-technical. It's very, very important. The soft skills. The problems we give you, the technical ones, could be solved in a multitude of ways, and that's deliberate. Because one of the things we want to do, we work with the candidate. So our interviews are all done on Zoom collaboratively. One person from StrongDM with a candidate. And as you're working, we can observe a few of the softer skills, but we also can ask questions and see how the candidate responds. Like, hey, you solved it in this way. What about this other way? And sometimes when you offer that alternative, you want to see, are they defensive? Are they open? Are they going to take that feedback? And the reason you want to validate these assumptions is you want someone who's collaborative. Because to Pavan's point, this is a team sport. Rarely ever are you going to work completely in isolation in software. You're going to work on a team with other individuals. You probably are not going to be the one and only person who has the answer to everything. You're going to have to iterate and collaborate with your team. And so we want to see some of these traits exhibited in the interview. So we look objectively on the technical ability. Can you actually do the problem? And how did you do it? And both are equal weighted. So at the end of the day, when we make a decision, we look at both of these axes. Did you do it, and how did you do it? And then we'll make a decision based on that.
Mm-hmm. And so on the technical piece, I think we've seen hundreds, if not thousands, of different technical interview processes, and they all seem somewhat similar. There's like a similar flavor, but I'm curious as to each of your philosophies in terms of how you conduct technical interviews, and in particular, how do you feel about take homes versus live coding or vice versa? Like, what are some of those thoughts that you have in terms of vetting a candidate from a technical perspective? Let's go with Kareem first.
So we err on the side of live coding. We give the candidate context on what they're about to expect. The problems we give you are our own problems. You can't find them in lead code. They're simple. They should all be solvable in that a lot of time, actually in a lot less than that. And they represent some of the problems that you will see working here, because we also want to give you a flavor of a day in the life. So they're highly applicable. And what I tell candidates is, if you look at this problem, you absolutely don't like it, that's a good thing. You're probably not going to like working here. Okay. So you get that signal as well as a candidate. We will time box into no more than an hour live on Zoom, working collaboratively. We do have some, every now and then we will offer a take home, and again, it's time bound. Because what I found with take home exercises is some candidates will spend an inordinate amount of time on them and feel somewhat dejected if they don't get the offer. And it's like, hey, I spent my entire weekend working on that. So we want to make sure that if we give you something that it's take home, that you can do it in no more than an hour. and it is sufficient to give us the signals that we need, so you don't end up spending a huge amount of time outside of your working day working for StrongDM.
Pavan, what about yourself? What's your philosophy to technical interviews?
Yeah, I agree with Karim. I think in Amplitude, there's more emphasis. We put more emphasis on the basic skill sets of programming versus memorization and being able to write good, clean code. And so we actually our interview is pretty similar to take home in the sense like we would actually let them have access to the full internet. They could go. We would like it to represent their day to day. So you could Google, you could do whatever you want to figure out what is the best solution for it. And you could use, we would encourage engineers to bring their own programming environment. So it's their own laptop, their own regular programming environment, whatever tools they use. And what we emphasize on like a good, bug-free, clean code by the end of the interview. We usually have a 1 hour interview. And so the more emphasis on that versus memorization of a particular algorithm or how to use a particular data structure, because all those things in a real world, you could actually figure out once you know that, okay, once you have a good sense of how to evaluate your code for a time complexity, space complexity, you could always look for like, oh, this doesn't look like a linear thing, this is a quadratic thing. So maybe there could be better ways you could go Google, figure out, right? Yep. That all works in the real world. So we would like to mimic that. With respect to take-home versus live interview, along with one other point I would add is other thing I noticed is as we go to the senior engineers who are already working, the engagement with the take-home is usually less. A lot more people we noticed actually don't complete the test and fall through. Mm-hmm. So they want to have that signal that we care and we are not just randomly throwing things to 1,000 engineers and all that. So they all prefer live with some engineer. So even for the senior engineers, especially ones who are already working, we try to do a live phone interview and stuff like just doing a take home. But for the new graduates and for internship though, we actually rely a lot on the take home. And to Karim's point, we also try to make it a time box, and we usually use HackerRank and have like a 1 hour or 1.5 hour set time to solve that problem. That's kind of what we found works best.
I think that makes a lot of sense. I mean, there's no right answer. I've had companies that will give candidates an option. Do you want to do live? Do you want to do take home? But then there's challenges because it's not like an apples to apples comparison. If someone does live versus take home, it's hard. I have other clients that want to standardize. Everyone has to do it this way, or, you got to do it this way, or you can't interview with us. And there's no right or wrong answer, right? So it's interesting, but it's cool what you're doing, Pavan, giving the candidate just like all the tools that they would have at home in the interview and just letting them have at it. Okay, this is going to be the last question. I want to talk a little bit about career progression for engineers and how you kind of support your engineers in their track. I'm looking kind of again at the profiles. I know, Karim, you're a product manager at Microsoft, and then you were a member of technical staff and went to VP of Engineering, and then you've been a VP of Engineering ever since. Pavan, you were a staff engineer, I think, to start at Amplitude, and then were promoted to engineering manager and moving forward. So how do you work with your engineers on your team to ensure that they know that there's career growth opportunities within their company? And then if they decide, hey, I want to be a VP of Eng one day or CTO, how do you foster that and support that engineer? Maybe they're just a mid-level engineer at this point. What are some of the things you do to support their growth? Let's start with Pavan.
So Amplitude definitely has a lot of emphasis on continuous learning at the company level too. Amplitude has the $1,000 stipend that it gives to every employee to learn whatever skill sets or attend any conferences they want throughout the year. So that's there from the Amplitude side. Along with it, what I try to make sure I convey to every engineer that I work with on the day one on my first one-on-one with them is I would like this relationship to be beyond Amplitude. I know I worked at enough companies to know that I'm not going to retire in Amplitude. I'm going to work after this. You are going to work after this. So I would like to make sure that whatever is your career goal as an engineer, that is, I could support it. So I would like to understand what is their career goal and try to align that with the opportunities and needs within Amplitude to kind of give them the scope and any opportunities to train the muscle, get the skill set that would help them down the line when they are going to the new role, right? So it's all about like getting them prepared for what could help them to be successful in the next kind of role. Like if they want to go PM, right, before even going to a PM role, they could actually potentially maybe take that opportunity to go talk to customers, try to create that peer FAQ for a new product that you are trying to build. They could do all those things as an engineer itself if you give them that opportunity. Like, hey, we are thinking maybe we would go solve this. Why don't you maybe go talk to customers, go through product board, look at all the feedback to come up with maybe what we could do, and maybe they could add their engineer skill set and the angle to it as well. And then that way they would be able to see what that role could look like. And it's all about giving those opportunities and giving those opportunities to train those muscles and maybe gain those skill sets even when they are in the current role. But obviously there is a business need, and so it's not like all the opportunities that they get would align with what they want to do in the career. But I see my role as a manager to be able to align those and see those, find those sweet spots where I could give them that satisfaction in their job as well.
That's great. I mean, hey, you've been at Amplitude 8 years. Who knows? Maybe you will retire there. We'll never know. Right? Karim, what about yourself? How do you support your engineers in their career growth?
It's same approach as well. So you want to first understand where does that person want to go. And typically in engineering, you end up having that fork in the road where maybe I want to become a tech lead growing into like a CTO, like, you know, or an architect position, or move into the manager route. It could also be I want to move into a completely different discipline. I'm in engineering and maybe I want to, you know, try and do product management. And some of these doors we can open and some we can't, because to Pavan's point, you know, the business might not be able to satisfy all of that. So you want to triangulate and find out what it is that they need in terms of their growth. Can I give them that? And how do I give them that opportunity with that safety net? Because oftentimes I found that someone can raise their hand and say, hey, I want to be an engineering manager. Like, great. Why do you want to do that? And if they have the right motivations, the right mindset, typically what I've done it is, fine, let's try and make that happen. And if you don't like it, it's okay to come back, because you don't need to feel that you're stuck. You also want to make sure that these doors are equivalent, because the very last thing you want to do is someone raising their hand and saying, hey, I want to be an engineering manager because the compensation here is higher than remaining an IC engineer. That offers these perverse incentives. So I usually work with my team, especially people who want to try one track versus the other, saying we can experiment on all these things if the business is able to give you that opportunity. And if it doesn't work, we can always undo that, especially in a small company like ours. The other option as well is someone raises their hand and says, hey, I want to be a CTO. I don't, you know, go talk to Tim, the CEO here. If he offers you that position, great. But if it's not around here, I will help them, you know, progress at the company and even open up doors outside if that is really what they want to do. Because the very last thing you want is to hinder someone's career. They'll end up being demotivated and leaving regardless. So you might as well just help them get to where they want.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. And, you know, just in closing, you know, I've talked about this before. It's like the 30-year relationship mindset, right? The people that you work with today, hopefully you'll be continuing to work with in some capacity over 30 years, right? And if you have that mentality, you'll build long-lasting relationships that will be fruitful for the entire career that you have. So I think that's important. Karim, Pavan, thank you guys so much for joining. I learned a ton today, and I hope you guys learned a bit from each other. It was a really great episode, and hopefully, you know, we can stay in touch and maybe we'll do this again sometime in the future.
Thanks for having me.
Pleasure is mine. Thanks for having me.
All right. Have a great day. See you later.